So I'm diving back into work after a few weeks off, and I have a few larger features that are planned for this year. But before I do that, I need to update the data model. So I thought it'd be interesting and maybe fun to show you what I am planning and what I'm going to be doing, and maybe get some feedback. I'm doing these model updates for two reasons. One is there's going to be new features, which means that the data model is going to have to change to account for those new features. The other is that most of the data that you have in SOFA is saved locally to your device. So if your internet connection cut off, you would still be able to access it. But not all of the data is saved locally. So for example, if you open the details of a movie, all of that data is not saved locally, just some of it is. And that's to really save on storage, and because there's easy access to those APIs and those data sources. There are some instances where it would be nice to have that data stored locally. One is, like I said, when you don't have a strong internet connection. The other is for things like shortcuts, where you want to have quick and fast access to all of this data. So I want to be able to store most, maybe all of the data locally on device, so that it'll just make newer features a lot easier to implement. So let's take a walk through this, and just a little caveat before we jump in. This stuff is in progress and is likely to change before I push anything out. This is I'm in the kind of planning stage for this and kind of mapping out how the changes are going to work. So if you see something that you will fall in love with here, don't do that, because it might change. So there's a couple things that I'm going to be focused on. First thing is display order for manual sorting. So I used to have manual sorting for, say you want to manually sort list in any order or items within a list. I used to have that, but I used, instead of a double, I used an int for that. And it was kind of a pain to update things. So I saw someone suggest using a double, which is a great idea because you have a lot more fine tuning and finesse to be able to make updates when you're moving items freely amongst a list. But this is something that I need to implement across the various different data types within the app. This is going to be something that I have to update the model to account for this, and then later I will implement this feature so that it all works. So the next thing is I want to be able to save list element data locally. So a list element is an item in a list. So it's a movie, it's a book, video game, that kind of thing. So that is a list element within the data model. And like I said, I don't save that stuff locally. I should say is I don't save the details of it locally. I save like the image or the image URL, the title, what data type it is, that kind of stuff. But I want to be able to save more information here. And so things like the description, maybe a link, that kind of stuff. So to be able to do that, I have to update the model a little bit to be able to do something like that. But also I need to think through, how am I going to download that data and when am I going to download that data? So for example, if someone has a couple hundred items saved in SOFA, I can't just go update and save all that stuff locally all at one time. That's because all of the various data sources I use have different rate limits or API restrictions that will make it difficult to do that all in one shot. So I'm thinking through different ways to implement this. One is, well, first, anytime you add something new at that point, once this will ship out, that will automatically be saved locally. So that'll kind of happen as you do it. But anything that you already have saved, I'm thinking that when you view the details of it, so you tap on it to see like a movie's details, at that point it would fetch the latest information and then save that locally. It might take a little bit of time to get all of those saved locally for people's devices, but this might be the most practical way to do it within the constraints that I have for getting access to that information. The next thing is custom list element database properties. It's kind of a mouthful. If you're familiar with tools like Notion, what I'm using right now, or tools like Airtable, they have the concept of properties or fields, and you can choose, say, oh, I want this field or this property to be text, I want it to be a checkbox or a drop down, right? Like this kind of thing here. This is a select, a single select. You can have things be dates, calendars, that kind of stuff. And I think there's something interesting to do a similar approach with Sofa as well, which would add a lot of flexibility and potentially open it up to a lot more uses than are currently within the app today. Now, it would make it more complicated, but I think I can figure out the UI where you can, if you don't want to use something like this, you can just kind of ignore it and it won't get in the way. But if you do want a little more complexity, or a lot more complexity, you could do that. So I'm starting to think through how to model that out, because this is going to require many updates to the data model. So I really want to think this one through to make sure I kind of get it right. You know, some of the things I'm thinking of is you could have a text property, numbers, right? So this could be good for, say, like you add a book and you want to put in the number of pages it has, or the price of the book that you saw at your local bookstore, right? You'd be able to do stuff like that. Things like dates, links. So you'd be able to add a link or a URL. So say you want to link to, you know, where the book is on Amazon or somewhere else. Single select and a multi-select. This could be pretty interesting because I have some videos down here where people will build these very complicated spreadsheets to track the books they read, or the movies they watch, or the shows they watch. And it's incredibly impressive what people put together, and they have very custom workflows. And I think there's something interesting with, hey, could you have those custom workflows, but in a nice native iOS app, without having to create the spreadsheet from scratch? You could use something like Sofa for stuff like that. So that's kind of the inspiration for a lot of these things. I mean, if you go on YouTube and just type in, like, you know, book tracker spreadsheet, there are tons of videos that people doing really cool stuff. So that was kind of the inspiration for stuff like this. And again, this needs a lot of thought still, but something that I am playing with. So the next one we're looking at is custom data types. And this is a feature that's been requested quite a bit, leaning on the flexibility angle for Sofa. Being able to create your own custom data types could be pretty interesting. And this is where, you know, you have your default ones that are all, you know, they come with the app. So you get movies, video games, board games, that kind of stuff. But with something like this, you could create your own custom data types. So maybe you want a data type for comic books or YouTube videos or restaurants, that kind of stuff. So it'll give a lot more flexibility to, you know, the app that's already there. And this by itself is not really an interesting feature. It's really this combined with other things. So like the next one, being able to add content to Sofa via a link or a URL. So you know, right now the only way to get stuff into Sofa is via the data sources. So you have to search, and sometimes you may want to just add something via a link. Maybe you have a link to a movie, or maybe you have a link to, you know, places you want to see on vacation or something like that. So kind of expanding this a little bit more. And if you think about something like this combined with custom data types, then it starts to become more interesting. So maybe you want to have a data type called YouTube, right? Or YouTube videos, whatever you want to do. And then you can just send YouTube links into Sofa, and it would create this nice, you know, rich detail and everything from that link for you. So there's still a ton to think through here, from what the actual experience is, and how it all works and what the UI looks like. But I'm kind of at the beginning stages here of a lot of these larger features. And I thought it'd be interesting to just show you what stuff like this looks like, where, you know, sometimes someone requests a feature and then it magically shows up one day and you're not really sure how it got there. And starting like this is very common, where, you know, you're just writing a lot at the beginning and just thinking through how this would work, what would need to change, those kinds of things. So those are my updates. Hope you found this interesting. Maybe, I don't know. This might be a little nerdy for folks, but hopefully it's interesting to see a little bit of little behind the scenes for how the planning and stuff like this actually happens. So if you haven't downloaded Sofa yet, come on, do it. Do it. You can head over to the App Store and you can search Sofa and you'll find it there. Or there's a link in the description that you click on check that out. Also, if you want to hang out with other people who use Sofa, we have a Discord server, which you are welcome to join. We'd love to have you. There's also a link in the description. You can check that out. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.